Evening, everyone. I will call this meeting of the Albany Housing Advisory Commission to order. I will read the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of LaShawn. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. Can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Marks.
Here.
Commissioner Cantu.
Present.
Chair Tiedemann.
Here.
And Commissioners Ramirez and Winkler have excused absences.
Thank you very much for that note. I was about to make it myself. With that, we'll move to item number 2, which is our approval of the minutes. Do we have any questions or comments from committee members on the minutes? Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
If anyone would like to address the commission on the minutes, please use the raise your hand function. I am not seeing any hands raised.
With that, I'll bring it back to committee members. I will look for a motion.
And I second.
Moved by Mark, seconded by Cantu. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantu.
Yes.
Chair Tiedemann.
Aye. And that passes. With that, we'll go on to good of the order, public comment. This is for persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on our agenda. Due to state law known as the Brown Act, we are limited in our ability to discuss items not on our agenda. Therefore, they may be referred to staff for comment or a brief answer or to a future agenda. And in this and all items, please address your comments to the commission members and be respectful of everybody, as we want everyone to feel comfortable making their comment. I don't see anybody in the room, so I will look for any comment online for items not on the agenda.
Again, if we have 2 members of the public online. If you wish to address the commission on something that's not on the agenda, please use the raise a hand function in Zoom. And I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Seeing none, we will move on to our main item, which is item 5, which is our policy discussion on access to legal counsel. And I will hand it over to staff for their report.
Wonderful. Good evening, commissioners and Chair Tiedemann and members of the public. My name is Chris Hess, and I'm a consultant for the City of Albany, helping out with the research and reporting for the Housing Advisory Commission on various matters of housing and housing element implementation. I've been assisting the commission with tenant protection work and research, and appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to present on this question. Tonight's topic is access to legal assistance in rental housing matters. So that involves any legal assistance and resources that are available to particularly low-income renters and low-income property owners available in the City of Albany. Within our 2025 calendar, we've arrived about halfway at this point. You can see here what are the different topics that we've looked at already as a commission. This is the last major meeting on topics that were discussed in our housing element around tenant protections. Next month, we will be having a recess and not meeting until September, when the Housing Advisory Commission will be meeting to discuss possible recommendations to be making to the City Council. So the purpose of the discussion tonight is that we want to have a public hearing on access to legal help in rental housing matters that is available to Albany tenants and property owners, particularly in the areas of eviction, but in general with all manners of compliance with state and local law in regards to that relationship. In this process, we'll consider regional guidance and the approach that other jurisdictions have taken to providing legal assistance in the community. We'll consider potential approaches the city could take, such as a referral network or a pilot project, and we'll gather feedback from the Housing Advisory Commission and the public on this. There is no action that is required in today's meeting. So because Albany has not established any type of legal services program for its tenants or its property owners, the resources that are generally available in Alameda County are the ones that that Albany tenants would be having access to. However, we find that this does vary quite a bit, depending a great deal on an individual's eligibility, such as their income, language access for folks that don't speak English as their first language, and then the limited capacity of organizations to actually serve or represent folks that are needing some kind of legal assistance. Oftentimes folks come a little bit late in the process. Maybe there's already been an eviction lawsuit filed. Maybe they only meet the attorney for the first time when they're about to actually go to court on that matter. And so in these cases, representation is extremely limited. Additionally, there is a little bit of luck involved if an individual seeks assistance at a time that organizations are having a lot of capacity. They'll probably get good assistance, and at bigger crunch times for the legal aid organizations, they're probably going to get very limited assistance, maybe only a phone call and a little bit of help representing themselves, just with some advice on the paperwork, for example. One thing that we've learned is that there are certain individuals that do obtain a full type of representation, and that there have also been cases where cities have affirmatively engaged some of these organizations because they realize that they have some particular problem that has a legal matter or has a legal implication, and so the city actually may contract with one of the legal aid organizations in those cases. So briefly on why legal help does matter a great deal in this. On the tenant side of things, having a legal representation in an eviction case makes an enormous difference in the outcome. Folks that have legal representation are extremely likely, 90% in many cases, likely to actually retain their housing eventually, and that could be through a settlement, not necessarily through a complete dragged out battle in court, but just the fact of having someone in their corner that knows the lay of the land can help that much. Nationally speaking, most low-income tenants actually don't have representation, and so the outcomes are poor. It's a little bit better in the Bay Area for some reasons that we'll describe here. And then on the property owner side, it's really extremely helpful to have legal representation, because it seems that, oftentimes property owners that may be small property owners don't feel like they have enough funds for an attorney, try to do things based upon out of what they think is right, but they miss steps or don't do things the way that California law demands, which can set their process back a great deal or invalidate it entirely. So the policy landscape overall on this is that statewide, California has not established that there is a right to counsel for eviction proceedings. It's not alone. None of the states actually have that type of a guaranteed right. In fact, only the City of San Francisco really has a universally guaranteed right to legal representation in eviction proceedings. If we look at some of the guidance that we've been looking at for what cities should do in regards to tenant protections from the outside, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Transit-Oriented Communities Policy encourages cities to establish these types of legal assistance programs, especially in displacement-prone areas. Some of the ways that cities have funded programs that assist tenants are through the, local housing trust funds, state and county funds such as HHAP, the Homelessness Housing Assistance and Prevention funds, philanthropy, and private contributions. So as I mentioned, San Francisco does have a voter-approved right to counsel, which passed in 2018, and it's had great results, actually, for keeping people housed. 92% of the folks that are represented by that program actually do remain housed by the end of it. Los Angeles has begun phasing in a rollout by focusing on certain neighborhoods first. Of the individuals assisted by their program, 88% retained housing. And a little bit closer here in Berkeley, the East Bay Community Law Center and Eviction Defense Center are both contractors of the city, and the city has done that. The city of Berkeley has done that to try to ensure that low-income tenants have priority with those organizations in getting representation, including sometimes full representation in the process. So the organizations, which I've made a little bit of reference to, include the Eviction Defense Center, which does provide defense in eviction cases. It does not generally do any affirmative lawsuits except in a very unusual case. They do a lot of support with mediation, including directly there at the courthouse. There's a pre-settlement conference that occurs before evictions are heard, and generally any tenant that goes to that conference can talk to somebody from the Eviction Defense Center or one of these organizations, at least about their case, and learn what the boundaries are. Talking with EDC, they really encourage actually a lot more representation for landlords, and especially small landlords, really wanting to fight against certain unlawful evictions upstream. They would rather be doing that than defending evictions, obviously. But I felt like that was an encouraging fact to share in my research with them. EBCLC is the East Bay Community Law Center. They also provide housing defense. They prioritize cities like Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, and the City of Alameda that have actually created a contract with them. And they do have a lot of self-help resources for both property owners and tenants on their website. Centro Legal de la Raza does multilingual services focusing on the Spanish-speaking community. They do tenant workshops in the community in Spanish and are really great support for that community. And HERA, which is Housing and Economic Rights Advocates, does financial and housing rights advocacy. They also focus on pre-eviction matters, trying to fight things upstream. They particularly serve property owners that are in danger of losing their properties and are a resource for small landlords as well. One that doesn't appear on here because it's not a legal organization exactly, but our contract with our rent review program with Echo Housing is a kind of a pre-legal resource that the city has engaged. And we talked about at length at the last meeting, so I didn't put it here, but is a place that both property owners and tenants in Albany are really encouraged to call and get some information about what California law allows and doesn't. So for the commission, just some discussion questions here for tonight, thinking about what are the biggest gaps, where people can go for help, what role the city should be playing in early intervention and education, which models seem most promising, and what type of funding could be brought to bear, because we obviously know that the City of Albany has not identified any funding for this up to today. That concludes that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions from committee members? Go for it.
Yes, what is it if an affirmative lawsuit was mentioned several times? I didn't understand what it was.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Sorry about that. So in litigation, these organizations are helping with defense. So when someone sues you, including if they sue you for possession of the unit in an eviction, you have to defend yourself in order to not be evicted or not have to pay some sort of damage. So that is a defensive representation that they provide. Affirmative would mean that you actually go out and sue someone else. For example, if you're a tenant and you want to sue your landlord, potentially for harassment and discrimination, as we've talked about before. These organizations do not generally provide affirmative representation, meaning they don't file suits against property owners out there.
I have another question. I looked up the HHAP, the Homeless Housing Assistance Prevention. I saw that in June of 23, they gave the City of Albany $3,119,117. So I'm assuming this is the fund that the city was using to help families stay housed in Albany. The last count I heard was over 50 families were helped. This is the fund they used for that, is that correct?
I had a brief conversation with my colleague Kate Miller today, who has more information on that. I'm not sure that exactly what those funds are for. I'm not in a position this evening to answer that. There's also some funds that were associated with the pandemic recovery, the ARPA funds,
Right.
that you may be, some of that money may be referring to.
Okay, so the money from the HHAP could go for legal services also? Is it up to the city to decide that?
So as far as I know, that would be an eligible expense. I believe that Albany probably applies collectively through for this funding through Alameda County. And what I'd like to offer to do is to bring more information on that issue in September, since I didn't include that in the research on this topic. But I do want to get you a good answer to that question.
Thank you.
Just one question on, you mentioned that some cities, so we have the baseline countywide legal assistance program, and some cities contract with those same organizations for a greater level of service, as mentioned in the staff report in the presentation. Can you describe more about what on top of the baseline that the county provides that gets them? Is it mostly more capacity, or is it specific other services?
Yeah, definitely it is more capacity. And what that means is that when capacity is limited, where an Albany tenant might only be able to have a conversation with a lawyer and needs to then do the paperwork themselves to defend themselves, a tenant in Berkeley in a similar situation might actually get full representation, and the East Bay Community Law Center or Eviction Defense Center would file that response to an eviction on their behalf. And presumably end up getting a little bit more positive results for the tenant in that situation. Additionally, I would say that those organizations are doing they're doing publicly available workshops. Albany tenants go to them, whether they're in Albany or not. But those workshops would be located in the cities that they have, and so tenants have a little bit more places to go at the moment that they need it.
Great, thank you for that additional detail. With that, we'll go to public comment. We'll start in the room. Is there any public comment in the room?
Elaine Stelton. A number of months ago, I lost my insurance, and I went to my insurance broker and I said, what happened? And he said, well, State Farm has pulled out of the insurance market with regard to all apartments in California. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, wrongful eviction lawsuits. So we lost a huge insurer, and unfortunately, many of us have had to pay a lot more, like 4 times as much. And again, this was due to these wrongful eviction lawsuits. So I want you to please consider what you are doing today. Consider additional consequences of your actions. It affects the entire market. In this case, it affects the whole state of California. So please be cautious in what you do. With regard to Albany specifically, we know there are very, very few evictions in the whole city. So really putting any sort of large program in place is completely unnecessary. There are services available, as we see, in Alameda. So this is not necessary for Albany specifically. So I thank you for that. And I also just wanted to mention something else. There's a lot of buzz on Nextdoor just about the garbage, because what waste management is doing at this point is photographing like trash cans. And so in my case, if I have a tenant, for example, that accidentally throws the wrong piece of garbage into the wrong can, I'm going to get a picture of that and a notice from Waste Management that my tenant has accidentally thrown garbage in the wrong can. So I will, of course, if this ever happens, I would approach my tenant and say, you know, I'm terribly sorry, but you made a mistake here. This is in the wrong can. But I can imagine if that continued, we could have a situation where that could escalate, and my tenant might ultimately feel like they were being harassed. Because, for one thing, I personally would look at, if somebody was looking at my garbage, I would feel like it was an invasion of privacy. I would not like that in the least. So I just want to mention that I never want to get into a situation with my tenants where it's going to look like I'm harassing them, particularly over a small thing like the garbage. And I wouldn't want one of those adversarial lawsuits to come at me over something like that either. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any comments online?
Yes, we have 2 hands raised. Sai, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. I actually was going to talk a lot about the Eviction Defense Center, or the collaborative, and that even Albany residents have used the EDC, and it is a very robust defense collaborative. I just wanted to further lay out that it's available to all, even if the City of Oakland prioritizes Oakland residents. If your time is coming up to answer, they will take your case, and you just simply have to show up at their door at the hours posted on their website. They deal with full eviction, defense, and unlawful detainer representation, legal support for substandard housing conditions, assistance with subsidized housing programs like Section 8, advocacy against illegal rent increases, enforcement of fair housing protections, and trial representation from qualifying tenants. That's off of their website. Free legal aid is truly not free, and I'd like to just also support Elaine in property management is so nuanced. And as far as the affirmative lawsuits, I mean, the smallest thing where a tenant really doesn't care about, say, the violation that you get, and it's not simply just a violation with a picture of your garbage can, it actually comes with a fine. And in our case, it comes with like a $300 fine at minimum. And, you know, and it's very difficult to manage that many tenants and to consistently educate them on composting and recycling and breaking down the boxes. And it does look like a form of harassment. I mean, we do look for labels. We do look for mail that shouldn't be in the garbage. And if it has your name, we're going to deliver it to your door and ask you to do it again, only because we need you to learn in the first place so that we don't continue to get dinged. There's no way for us to absorb these costs. And there's really no way that I can pass that cost on to the tenant because it's enormous. So we take it, we eat it, and we expense it. And it gets, the expenses get larger and larger. Free legal aid, it does exist out there already. And in terms of Albany Cares, we do have this system in place that I don't feel like we're fully and effectively using. Albany Cares at this point has had several years of data, and I'm wondering if the city during this time has looked for the additional 700 landlords that exist in the city, but we haven't been able to find. Because I think all the stakeholders, including the single-family homeowners, really need to pay attention to this portion of it, where it's long-term housing, bridging the gap during rough times, as was mentioned in last year's city council, and a more focus needs to be placed here. Because an eviction, the Eviction Defense Center is not going to stop an eviction. It is going to delay it, it is going to prolong it, but eventually the eviction does happen. And it happens with a few months free rent and a security deposit back to you and a waiver, and you don't have an eviction on your record. And that is sort of the only thing that you can do. Free legal aid is truly not free, and the city of Berkeley is paying for it right now. I just have one other thing to say. They have a $27 million shortfall, and the tenant legal services is one of the first to be dropped from their group. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mike, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mike Zojaji. I've been a resident living here for 20 years. Thank you for allowing me to speak here. Just want to say a few things. First, there was a proposal last year, last minute, brought in by 2 council members to literally tax housing providers and take that tax and use it for legal purposes and support and others. And overwhelmingly, voters voted against that. So I don't know what people are imagining today, what they're thinking of doing. Are they going to pursue it, something similar or to it, or disguise it differently? That should be a no-go because voters have already spoken against that. With regards to legal assistant, I've done a bit of research online. Appears that 3/4 of the evictions in U.S. are for non-payments of rent. They're usually complex, and they're really about a tenant not being able to pay the rent. Legal representation might be helpful in the court procedure, but it will not really help stop the eviction unless the rent is paid. The real root cause of the problems is the cost of housing. Lack of enough housing. There's a shortage of housing, chronic. The second thing, so the prices are high. That needs to be addressed. Unless you address that, everything else is just decoration and makes people feel that they've done something for the citizens here, and maybe some even take advantage of it and run for office and boost up their political career. Bottom line, in order to really tackle this issue, you have to focus on rental assistance programs. Instead of taking money away from whatever piggy bank there is there to pay for lawyers, take that and help with rental assistance. Lower the barriers for investors to come in and build houses here, and use non-lawyer advocates to help the tenants. And please, please, please do not say we are here to help the housing providers or landlords and the tenants. This is smoke and mirrors. This tactic has been used elsewhere, and we know really it's all about the tenants that many people are advocating for. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any more comments online?
If anyone else would like to address the commission, please use the raise your hand function. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the committee for comment. Would anyone like to just start us off in the discussion? Go for it.
Well, my initial thoughts are that if the tenants get right to legal representation, then the landlords should also get it. Of the organizations listed on the material, and some of this I'm repeating what Mr. Hess said, but HERA, H-E-R-A, was the only one that offered services to landlords as well as tenants. When I called HERA, I got a recorded message saying it may take up to 48 hours for someone to get back to me, and it's been more than 48 hours and no one has gotten back to me. I just wanted to get some more information about their program. I only saw one organization that had means testing for tenants, and that was the East Bay Community Law Center. I want to clarify up front that it does not assist tenants in Albany. I've called them and asked them this question. I know the speaker said they do. She might have different knowledge than what they gave me on the phone, but they only serve tenants in Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, and the city of Alameda. They require the tenants to be low or very low income categories to be eligible for their services. Right now, 50% of Albany tenants meet the income criteria. The question I have is, should there be means testing for landlords who want legal assistance? And I believe if tenants have means testing, landlords should also have a means test. The City of San Francisco, as Mr. Hess mentioned, has the most comprehensive program with a voter-approved right to counsel. And it looks like it's working remarkably well for them because 92% of the city's tenants with full legal representation have remained housed. Resources you have listed are great, but if no one knows about them, they might as well not exist. So for either tenants or landlords to get any use out of the resources, they have to know about them before an issue arises. Of course, in a perfect world, given the success of the San Francisco program, I would want Albany to have right for counsel for both tenants and landlords. I knew before I read the materials that early intervention and hopefully thus prevention of evictions are vital. It is not acceptable that less than half the landlords are registered. The speaker said there's 700 missing. I think there's more like 2,000 missing. Housing Element says there's about 4,000 renter households. I understand 1,500 landlords are registered. So I think it's not acceptable that less than half the landlords are registered, and most renters have no knowledge of what limited rights they do have. This is what I believe needs to happen. The city needs to step up and do the right thing. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission states that legal assistance should be visible, accessible, and integrated into greater anti-displacement strategies. The Eviction Defense Center says that jurisdictions should conduct annual or more frequent mailings to both tenants and landlords. They went on to say that landlord-directed mailings are an effective form of upstream prevention. HERA advocates to recommend recurring legal workshops as a cost-effective way to reach both tenants and landlords. It is time for the city to step up. If we can't sign on to a service such as the East Bay Community Law Center to provide the same services they provide to people in Berkeley, Emeryville, and Richmond, the city of Alameda, that the city has to be more proactive in letting people know what their rights are. Because the city does not seem to have a list of rental properties, landlords, or tenants the city would have to mail to each Albany household. Number 8,000 would be cut in half if it just went to renter households. I don't know what it costs to send a postcard to every household, but I think the need far outweighs the cost. I believe the city should take advantage of some of the strategies of other groups I'd mentioned. That would be mailings, in particular landlord-directed mailings, and recurring legal workshops for tenants and landlords. City of Alameda has a rent registration program like we have. If the fee is not paid by the landlord by August 31st, 2025, which is for this next year, a 10% penalty will be applied with an additional 10% to be added each month until a maximum penalty of 60% has been reached. Any landlord who does not register is not allowed to increase the rent. So there is a way to incentivize registering if the city would just do it. Also, FYI, in Alameda City, the annual general adjustment or allowed yearly rent increase effective September 1, 2025, to August 31, 2026 is 1%. The increase is based on 70% of the increase in the Consumer Price Index. In short, it appears we don't have the finances to sign on to any legal rights help for tenants. What we are left with is the city. The city has to step up, do mailings, hold workshops that are announced through a postcard mailing for both tenants and landlords. I would beg the city, don't wait until this hack process is over. We need to do something now. I would love to work with Mr. Winkler or have Aaron work with Mr. Winkler and come up, on a subcommittee and come up with an education workshop for tenants and landlords. That if we sent a postcard out to every place of the city, did it at the library, community center, had 2 a year, it would go a long way. I mean, people would then find out about these resources. Now, I mean, some of them I had never heard of, and I've looked into tenants' rights and eviction rights, so I think it's imperative. The only way to get the information out is that the city has to do it. And you could do mailings or workshops, or, and those don't seem like they're really unattainable for a city our size. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've been a renter here now for almost 22 years. Many of the things that we talk about in these meetings, I've never even heard of. And it makes me very, very sad. The first building that I lived in Albany, on Solano Avenue, there were always younger people moving in and moving out. There I understand. They're upwardly mobile. They saving money so they can buy a house. This was some years back. But now that I live over in a different area, there are less people, there's more condos. And those people have been there for a long time. But even those people themselves are unaware of anything that goes on in terms of their own rights. I just moved in to this new place 8 months ago, and nothing was ever told to me by the landlord, anything outside of this is what you're going to pay and this is the money that you're going to put up. And that was it. We are not doing a very good job at communicating with our residents. We have not registered the amount of people that we need to be registered in terms of the landlords. Like Marjorie said, maybe we need to put together a subcommittee and come up with some ideas in terms of how do we go about doing these things, and maybe come up with some penalties. I would prefer not. Everybody is having a hard time. This is not good times right now. They're very, very tough times. And I don't want to add to what the landlords are already dealing with. But at the same time, we need compliance. And if that's the only way to go about it in terms of punitive measures, then at least we need to broach the subject. Thank you.
Thank you to the other committee members for their comments. I think I'm largely in agreement with a lot of the sentiments expressed. I wanted to note do some fact setting around a couple things on this. First, that we heard in comments that this eviction defense doesn't stop evictions, or that this is sort of a decoration over the larger issue, and I fundamentally disagree with that because in the housing world, we talk about the 3 Ps of production, preservation, and protection. And what this committee is focused on, what all of our topics are about, is the protection part of things, which is preventing displacement of existing tenants and existing people and existing, especially lower income and historically disadvantaged people. And that is an important part of solving the housing crisis and taking meaningful action against it. And these eviction defense does stop some evictions. It stops wrongful evictions. It stops evictions where people aren't following the law or are ignoring just cause or anything like that. And while we have a baseline amount of protection that's not perfect and doesn't give everybody full legal representation or everybody the resources they need in Alameda County, we can compare to our neighboring counties that don't have that sort of thing. There's a court watch report from our neighbor in Contra Costa County that looked at unlawful detainer filings, that did essentially court watching, and found that there in Contra Costa County, where they don't have these types of services, the vast majority of tenants, over 90% of them, don't have representation, and they tend to lose cases that they would otherwise win because of that, because this is a complicated law that people don't know how to navigate, especially when they are being evicted from their home. So that points to the importance of having these services and why they're good, especially because looking at Contra Costa County again, 86% of the landlords had representation. So there's a vast disparity in who is represented and who is not. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't help small property owners who are lower income get that representation, like some of the organizations that were outlined in the presentation do. But all of that points to we need these services to be robust. And I know I work with people who oversee the county's eviction, the legal services contract. And we have, those folks have looked at courts and found that those groups are at capacity. They do not have the capacity to deal with all the people who need help and to give them all the representation that they really need. So there is worth in investing more in this, even if we do have some baseline, because there are probably tenants who are going without representation because of that. And so we need more capacity in these groups that are providing this service. And I think our last, one of our last discussion items on the rent review program, we proved that because it showed that most people who contacted the rent review program, what they needed was legal help. What they needed was help navigating legal landscape and learning what their rights were. And that also points to what my colleagues on the committee have pointed out, that we need to be doing more to make these services available and make them known to people. And that is obviously a truism. And we need to make it more clear what services are available to people now, and also what services could be available and what we could invest more in. So I think it is important that we do as some of our fellow cities have done and have our own contracts with these legal service providers so that they can provide more capacity for our residents. I think it's important that we promulgate resources about that and have these workshops like other cities around us have been able to do because they contract with those legal aid organizations, so that people in Albany can go to the Albany Community Center and go to a workshop on this sort of thing, and not go to Berkeley or go somewhere else to get that same information. We need to bring it here. I think there are ways to pay for that, and we've explored some of them in the city, and I think some of them are still worth exploring. But this is important stuff to do and to expand what we have. And a final note on, like was noted, this is a vast majority of this is focused on defense, is not affirmative action. And that's always going to be a stretch goal. I don't think we're going to necessarily have the resources to do that now. But I think we should keep it as a North Star, because so much of our landscape in terms of this regulation of this market is based in making people do the enforcement themselves. We do not have a lot of proactive enforcement for the laws that are set. We have, some statewide rent control and just cause. For even the homes that applies to and the tenants that applies to, most people do not have a good way of taking advantage of those rights, because most people don't have access to a lawyer to sue to take advantage of it. So I think there is a huge amount of people not being able to take advantage of the protections they do have because it requires them to take affirmative action. And as long as we have a regulation system that relies on people to take that affirmative action, then if we are not providing any means for that, then the people without the resources to afford a lawyer are not going to be able to take advantage of those rights as much as they should. So I know that that's going to be a difficulty. I know that that's going to be hard to fund, but I would like us to keep it as our North Star because it is so important for ensuring that people actually take advantage of what we are trying to do and make the law more than just a good sentiment that doesn't usually get enforced. And I believe that is all my comments on this topic. Are there any last thoughts from committee members? Seeing none, staff, do you have what you need from us?
I believe so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all our commenters on that item. With that, we'll go to announcements. Any announcements from committee members?
I have a question. So we don't have a meeting in August. Is this the appropriate time? Well, you don't know what my question is. And so in September, it said we're going to start formulating policies. I don't quite understand what that's going to look like, and I'd kind of like, I said, we only get the agenda like a few days before, so I'd like to be prepared for that September meeting. So if you could just kind of give me a little more meat for the bones.
I will work with Leslie on that and trying to come up with a strategy to take what we've learned in these meetings and get that information to you sooner. That makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further announcements from committee members? From staff? Seeing none, we will move to our last item, which is adjournment. Thank you to my committee members, to the members of the public, to our consultants and staff, and I'd like to especially thank our Community Development Director, Jeff Bond, for being here for one of his last meetings working for the city. We wish you a very happy retirement, and thank you for all the work that you've done on behalf of the city. I know from experience that you have done so very much, more so than as one man than most public servants I know. So thank you for taking on so much to make our city better and being such a pleasure to work with.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with. I haven't had a chance to work with this commission very often, but it has been a pleasure to work with this community generally, and it's been certainly the highlight of my career, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
We will. Thank you, Jeff. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Our next meeting is on September 3rd. We have a recess next month.